This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
You're listening to Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Postcards from the Edge. I'm your host, Amy Nelson, and today I have with me Heather Barker. Heather, you're relatively new to this and the first time you've been on Postcards. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit how you got into Star Trek and what are you doing now?
Oh, the mini condensed version. Let me try this out. Okay. So despite growing up really loving science fiction, I didn't get into Star Trek until I was an adult. I watched Enterprise as it aired, and I struggled with it a bit. But I wound up, I guess it was 2009, going to the Las Vegas Star Trek convention. And this was in my past life with my ex-husband. And once I went the first time and I kept going back. Somewhere in between there, I watched all of Star Trek except the animated series. And that was when I just kind of fell in love with Star Trek. And I may be obsessed with Star Trek.
Just a little bit. Who isn't?
Just a little bit. So yeah, that was 2009 when I went to my first STLV, and I kept going back. And that, he's an ex-husband now, so my life has changed over the years, so much to the point that I started my own podcast called Shore Leave, and that's about conventions. And so it's really consumed my life in the best of ways. I've built a great family within the Star Trek community, and now I'm really proud to be a podcaster and have a whole other family within that community. So that's my mini version of my story.
So approximately how many conventions do you go to a year?
I don't actually go to that many. Yeah, I know it's sad. I do a podcast about conventions and I only make it to one or two, but I own a business. And then this year I built a house. So moving forward, I'm kind of limited. I really pretty much go to local stuff. So, the Las Vegas Star Trek convention is obviously in Nevada and I'm here in Denver. We have Starfest here and Denver Comic-Con. But my co-host of Shore Leave, Jeff Hewlett, he's been able to go to a bunch, and then we've worked out within our STLV community having different people pop in when they go to conventions. While I don't get to go to as many, I have a lot of great friends that do, and so I live vicariously through them.
Well, that's very exciting. And will we see you in Las Vegas next year?
Every year.
Yay!
I can't imagine my life not going. It's really become about family and seeing friends from all over the world. So I go to that family reunion and I skip my blood family reunions.
Oh my goodness. Well, we will for sure have to hang out next year because I live in Las Vegas. So I always will be going. And I'm with you. It's just turned into visiting family. And I'm lucky because everyone comes to visit me. Yeah. That's how I view it.
Yeah. If I had that luxury, I could probably go to more conventions.
Yes. Well, we're not here to talk about conventions. We are here to talk about episode 4 of Discovery, The Butcher's Knife Cares Not for the Lamb's Cry. Now, you will get to hear my thoughts tomorrow on the main show, The Edge, but I'm interested, Heather, what's your thoughts on this episode?
This episode was tough for me. My first watch, I didn't like it. And I hate admitting that because I really love Discovery. I have loved every episode, and Context is for Kings. Man, that episode blew me away.
Yes, agreed.
So watching this one, I had a tough time, and I don't want to go through like all the things I had problems with. But I came back and watched it again, and it got a little bit better. There's still stuff that I love. I love the disco ball, right? It's like we finally get to see the ship in action, and that was truly amazing. Despite the character that we lost in the episode, we got a lot more of L'Rell, who is phenomenal. I am completely taken with her. I'm excited to see what she does moving forward. And I was also excited to see a lot of new officers on the bridge. We didn't get to learn a lot about them. If you watch After Trek, they popped up some info with their names. So that was kind of neat to at least see their names and what they do. But it was nice to get to see more of the crew of Discovery. So that was all great, despite the issues that I had. But it seems like a lot of our listeners shared some of those concerns, which we will talk about here in a bit.
Well, so let's dive into what the listeners thought. And we've sort of lumped it into some categories. So the first thing that was just blew everyone away was, again, seeing the Discovery Starship and more of its potential. Dave Veenstra says, spinning saucer. What about the people in those spinning sections? I guess the inertial dampeners must be extra strong in those sections.
I didn't really think about it when I watched it. I'm just there for the ride. Like, wow, oh my gosh, so pretty, so cool. But I'm glad that Bruce Gibson chimed in there and said that he assumes there aren't any crew quarters in the spinning saucer section. But I guess it could be either. I'm not sure.
Jason Chapman said, this is so funny, Jason, you're going to love this. I'm a 43-year-old man, and when I saw the Discovery's hull rotating, I screamed like a little girl. Shh, don't tell no one. Well, unfortunately, we are telling the world that you were screaming like a little girl over that. And I was there with you. I saw it, and I was watching it with my brother, just like, oh my gosh, that is so out there. I did not expect that at all.
No, I love the look of the ship, and I never really thought that it might do that. And I've heard a lot of criticism about it, and why is it that way? And I guess now we know. So I really like that we got that answered there. It was pretty awesome. Patrick Carlin chimed in and said, I know we'd seen it in the graphic the week before, but I loved actually getting to see the different parts of the saucer rotate when they fired up the spore drive. And I really think, like, most of us agree that it was just really, really cool to see a ship do that.
Yeah, Nicholas Paul Collinson says, I'm totally sold on the Discovery design now, because there was quite a bit of questions when it was first seen and announced what this Discovery ship would look like. And he continues, says, it was about the only aspect of the show I was skeptical about until now, but seeing it in action is awesome. Even if I'm not a huge fan of the spinning saucer, always wondered what that would look like.
Yeah, it looked pretty cool.
Yes, it did. So Captain Lorca, he definitely is becoming a force to be reckoned with. And Chris Chaplin says, I appreciate that Lorca is the strong, steady beat of war that is guiding this unprepared crew toward an end to the war. That end, Lorca hopes, comes through science, but the price is the crew's innocence, the purity of seeking knowledge, and, as Stamets says, truth. So Lorca may not be this dark and devious player, just a strong hand to help people adjust to war. He's Cisco in the pale moonlight. Interesting comparison.
It is. I really like that viewpoint because, to be honest, I still don't know what the deal with Lorca is. I really like him. I love the enigma that surrounds him, and I think that Jason Isaacs is doing a phenomenal job. And we are so lucky to have these amazing actors on Star Trek, right? I mean, they're all just doing an incredible job. Up until this episode, I really felt that, yeah, he's a bad guy. I think, I like him, but I don't know that we're supposed to like him. And this episode, I actually thought that he seemed more chill, and he has a job, and his job is to win the war, and that I understand. He didn't seem so ominous aside from Landry's comments about him and basically the crew comments. Like, I feel like the crew definitely is adding to that skepticism of him and him being a dark creature. But him in this episode, no, I like him. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you. I go back and forth, and I mentioned it last week when we were introduced to him. I'm like, okay, so yeah, is he going to, is the ends justify the means in every scenario, and is winning the war at all costs? It's that last at all costs that is worrisome.
Yeah.
And what are his morals and intentions with that? Shoaib Mirza says, Lorca is amazing. He's so intense and not going to take shit. Also, he never sits. This immediately differentiates Lorca from any captain we've seen in Trek. I so noticed that when he was eating his food and he's not sitting down. I'm like, dude, what's going on with you?
Well, it is a standing desk. And I remember from the previous, not last night, but the week before, the After Trek episode, Aaron Harbert said that they intentionally gave him a standing desk to make him intimidating. But he doesn't sit in the captain's chair either.
Right. We've seen Saru sit in the captain's chair.
Yeah. So I guess he's a man of action, and he wants to get it done is all that I can think for now. But it was a funny point.
Yeah, I think this is the first captain we don't really see on the bridge, because most of his scenes are either in his ready room or in engineering. He's not very much on the bridge that often.
Yeah.
So interesting. Well, let's talk about our beloved Captain Georgiou. Did I say that right? Georgiou? Georgiou.
Yes. I'm having trouble saying many of the names, so it's okay. I've noticed that a lot of people out there are.
Yeah. Matthew Baker says, Georgiou is the beating heart of Discovery, despite her untimely demise.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I was really glad that we got to see her. There's been a lot of people fell in love with her in those 2 episodes and were devastated to lose her and eager to find out if we would see more of her, which I believe at this point we know that we will. So, man, her will, that was some phenomenal writing, and really, really speaks to the fact that there still is hope and optimism in this version of Star Trek. Let's see. So Christopher Baca, 4 episodes in, and I'm already emotionally invested. Got a little choked up over G's last message to Mike. That was a little like Kirk's message to Bones and Spock and Tholian Webb.
Yes. And Mark Flessick says, take good care, but more importantly, take good care of those in your care. If that isn't a perfect summation of what the Federation and Starfleet stand for, I don't know what is. That's very good. And yeah, I loved that when she said that in her little time capsule.
Yeah, it truly is. I know that Discovery seems to have a dark tone, but I think that if you know where to look, and I think that this part made it even more evident, like it's there. Like you can look towards Burnham to find this hope and optimism, and now Georgiou brought it at the end. So that was emotional for me. And man, Sonequa Martin Green, she's such a good actress. Like her reactions to all of these things, including when she opened the box. Oh my gosh, heartstrings for sure. I'm really glad that Captain Georgiou was in the episode because that definitely helped give it some positivity.
Yeah. And talking about Sonequa Martin Green, like when she put her finger touch to open up the box that she didn't know, I mean, it had been, 6+ months since, that incident. And so to get this box and just like, oh, I'm going to open up this piece of mail, and then to hear that it was from, Philippa, she threw her hands off like, oh my gosh, I can't touch this, threw it under the bed, out of sight. I don't want to deal with it right now.
Yeah.
Just that was very real to me.
It
authentic.
was. I think I would have done the same exact thing, because it's like you've seen a ghost, basically. You're not expecting that, and there it is right in front of you. And I don't doubt that she is still processing what happened.
Yes.
You can be in shock for a very long time, and that was a lot that happened to her. I'm really glad that Tilly encouraged her at the end. I really love those interactions between the women, the crews. It means a lot to me as a woman. And so I'm glad that I love that relationship, because we have, the relationship between Michael and Philippa. And now with Captain Georgiou gone, now Michael Burnham has kind of become the mentor, and Tilly is the mentee. So it's a passing of the torch in a way. And so I love that Tilly was the one that encouraged her. And so I'm going to cry just thinking about it.
Yes. Well, it's not a person. Another animal that is becoming a character is our kitty. So Suman Dewan says, warning, animal activist speaking. And she says, really dislike the exploitation of the creature. It seems like it's getting hurt when they use the drive. Also, they should keep it in the garden, not in a cell. It seems that most is happy there. However, the title fits. I can't help but think this is going to backfire really bad. Little premonition there, Suman. I hear you.
Oh, man. Yeah. So this is why I had a lot of trouble with the episode. Being an avid rescue advocate, it was really difficult for me to watch Ripper, which I don't like the name Ripper. I'd rather just call it Kitty. Watching that creature suffer. And I think the fact that, I understand that Burnham couldn't react because reasons, right? They were in the middle of doing the jump, and if she did something that would endanger the whole crew. But it's like we know that she acts decisively. She acts not necessarily logically, but she reacts when she sees something morally wrong and when she thinks she's doing the right thing. So I sat there in that moment listening to this creature, in pain, in distress, and watching Michael's face. And I'm like, okay, are you going to do it now? And nothing happened. And obviously we're going to get more of this in the story, because we've learned that the tardigrade is going to be, featured in episodes. So I have a feeling that down the road we're going to see more. But I completely agree with Suman. It was very difficult, and they should totally keep it in the garden. All right. So Patrick Carlin said, what they're doing to the creature, pushing it to exhaustion for their purpose, is also reminding me of the Romulan arc on Enterprise with the Anar pilot. Admiral Valdor wanting to keep pushing and pushing regardless of the physical cost, while Nigel was unsuccessfully trying to hold him back. I definitely see this ending in a similar way to how that went. I haven't watched that episode recently. Sorry.
But thanks for making the comparison.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure it's there. And I also have heard a lot of comparisons to Devil in the Dark from original series with the Horta. And so this theme, this really moral theme of, how far are we going to go, is evident in Star Trek. And
in all of its iterations. I mean, yeah. I know Next Gen and can just point to many, I figure we're going to get a Measure of a Man episode here in Discovery. Joe Salzman says, I'm still processing the episode. The animal abuse isn't cool, but I can see in Michael's eyes that it will be addressed. Mm-hmm. And I think you're right there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tough thing to watch. And you know what? That's something that I'm fine with Star Trek confronting. some things are tough. And again, with this being, a series long arc, we really have to kind of see how it goes. It's not going to be wrapped up in each single episode. So I'm Team Tardigrade, and I have faith that he or she will be taken care of, or maybe they.
Shoaib Mirza says, sort of following along, the tardigrade subplot. This is classic Trek monster to sentient life form story we all love. Seeing Burnham's in-depth investigation of the Glen and her analysis of the tardigrade's behavior was great. Not to mention, this is a bittersweet situation for Burnham, having made the breakthrough that results in innocent life form being enslaved for their benefits. Definitely has those Star Trek themes that we talked about.
Yeah, super. I just, Devil in the Dark is a big one for me. And I see so much there. Same questions. And Burnham did that when they approached the Torchbearer, the Klingon ship to begin with. She was like, well, how do we know? We don't know what it is. We don't know that it's going to be aggressive. And I love that in that episode. And so I love that she did this here. And I think that's a really great lesson for us all, is we don't need to approach something on the defensive.
Right. Or in fear.
Yeah. We don't know. And it could come in peace, just like we say we do.
Yeah. Oh, that was good. Yeah. All right. Well, the Klingons have definitely got a lot of attention as well. Dan McWilliams says, again, I love that they depict the Klingons as having absolutely no real common ground with the United Federation of Planets, to the point where any attempt at traditional negotiation is believably pointless.
They're scary, right?
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that.
Matthew Baker says, the Klingons are speaking much more naturally now, not as just disjointed as it was on A Vulcan Hello. And I agree with that. I think Mary Chieffo did really an amazing job of speaking and just being L'Rell. So I definitely see that improvement there.
Christopher Baca says, we also found the Klingons don't possess cloaking technology except for the Sarcophagus ship. And Morgan Whitfield continues, says, based on Cole's comment in the episode, the Sarcophagus is definitely a ship of Romulan origin.
Ooh, and I thought Romulan was the bad word on Discovery.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see if they'll touch that. And we've got some episodes to go, I guess.
We do.
So Kay Elizabeth Shaw said 733 episodes plus movies. And finally, I love the Klingons. They just got, I know, seriously. They just got interesting, and I can't wait to see the matriarchs. I totally agree. I am girl power, can I just say? Like, I don't know who they are, but I can't wait to see them. And I've wanted these Klingons for a long time. I love how they look. I love how they act. I was a little grossed out at a certain part that we may or may not touch on in comments.
Yes, we will.
But yeah, super awesome.
Yeah, Nicholas Paul Collinson says in a sub-comment to Kay, I know, right? I've never really been a Klingon fan, but Disco has completely turned me around. My partner is watching Trek for the first time, and they are by far her favorite part of the show. We both think L'Rell/Vok is now the best ship.
Man, that line was so good. Shall we uncouple?
Okay, was it good or was it unnecessary? I don't know.
I liked it. You could definitely sense the vibe going on there, and I'm curious to see what happens. But I kind of liked it.
Yeah.
All right. So Rick Collins said, I'm glad to see the Klingons portrayed as violent to the point of being revolting. I never quite understood how the Federation could see itself as close allies to an empire that subjugates others and celebrates it. It is good to see Trek not trying to gloss over how brutal they are.
Oh, they were brutal. And I don't think I even picked up on this until reading these fan comments. Rebecca Skipper says, actually, if the writer's goal was to present both sides fairly, I'm not sure this portrayal of the Klingons to this point leaves that impression, particularly if one of them ate Georgiou's body. Disgusting. And then Bill Sweet says, I think several ate her.
Oh, man.
I know. And Rebecca continues and says, my hope is that we will see more Klingons that are not as brutal and more like the Klingons we saw in TNG and DS9. Yes, those Klingons were brutal to a point, but they were loved because of their adherence to honor and loyalty. Any story that presents a race in a monocultural way doesn't sit well with me. And so we do, because we have the whole setup with Takuvma from episodes 1 and 2, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping to see this honor and loyalty and unity, and hopefully Voq and L'Rell can accomplish that. But right now it is not unity, and it's everyone out for themselves.
No. And we know, because Cole said, the houses are only united right now because of the war.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to get the war done, and then they're going to go their separate ways again.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that Voq is and L'Rell perhaps. I think there's still some question of what her motives truly are. But I think that he is definitely more like the Klingons that we know. He's the Michael Burnham of the Klingons or something.
I love that.
But I'm curious to see what happens, because I really, when we first met him, I mean, he stuck his hand in the flames and he's like, I'm behind you and I'm going to serve you and I don't fear anything. And then now, man, he reminds me of Rom from DS9, and I don't know why.
Wow.
Yeah, there's something about him where he's just like, even though I know like he's going to be a very strong character, I think he's going to come into his own, basically, because that's what happened with Rom. He lived in the shadow of Quark for so long, and then he really started to blossom. And I think that with the help of L'Rell, we're going to see that with Voq. I don't know how to say the name, guys.
We're still learning names and characters.
Yeah, but I'm curious to see what happens, and totally agree. I also missed the eating Captain Georgiou. I had some difficulty with the subtitles this time, and they would go really fast, and I didn't get to read them all. But I didn't realize till my rewatch that that's what they said, and I was like, "Holy cow, that's a lot!" And that was it was just very unsettling.
Yes. Clara Jean Cook agrees with you and says the Klingons eating humans just made them 100 times more frightening for me.
Yep.
Yes, that doesn't bode well for the future. She loves this episode. Yeah, so here at Postcards, we're not all about sunshine and roses. After leaving that discussion. Oh my gosh. So there has been a little bit of negative reception, but mostly in the form of questions. And Liam Kerrigan says, sorry to be that guy again. All right, Liam, I'm getting to know your name. That's okay. But I really didn't like this episode. Animal cruelty, unnecessary brutality, and yet more gore and violence. Also, Captain Georgiou is the only character I've liked so far. Was the whole eaten by cannibal Klingons reference really needed? I'm trying hard to like the show, but they really aren't making it easy for me. Well, Liam, I do hear you, and it was very gruesome, and I don't know. Do you think it was unnecessary brutality, or what are you thinking with that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot. And to me, like, that combined with Landry, and I was kind of sad, because two episodes and she's gone. And not that I loved her, right? But like, hello, we didn't even get to know her.
No, I just learned her name. I'm like, who is this officer? I was like, okay, I was thinking Landry the whole week. And then Sunday, bam, she's gone. I'm like, what are you doing? I just learned her name.
It just felt a little, it was too soon and just kind of, it was predictable. And like, once she, got her weapon, I was like, oh gosh. So like, I was just disappointed with that. And then I really struggled with, the torture of the tardigrade. And so then with this information on top of it, I mean, I totally agree that it makes the Klingons something to fear. And that's something that I want, because I've never been afraid of Klingons.
Right.
So on one hand, I think it's great. On another hand, I think that might have been a little too far for me, especially in this episode where I had difficulty with so many other things.
Well, and when I think of what makes a good enemy for Star Trek, I instantly, because of my love of Next Gen, go to the Borg, right? And that assimilation process has never been glossed over. They're going to assimilate you. They're going to dismember you and take out parts and add parts. Like, that's pretty gruesome and brutal, and it's real. And that scares the lights out of you, right?
Yeah.
So I think they're going for that, and I think they achieved it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, Brett Lonsway really enjoyed this, and we might stop and answer some questions because it's all about questions here. He says, overall, I like the episode. The use of the space tardigrade leads to many classic Trek conflicts about the rights of living things, etc. But there were a few things that threw me right out of it. Did Starfleet return to the binary system Shenzhou or not? If they did, they retrieved all of Georgiou's belongings from her ready room. Not only the telescope, but all of her books and knickknacks were gone as well. And they left the giant Klingon sarcophagus ship there unmolested? If not, then are we to presume that someone, not Burnham, while rushing for the escape pods, stopped to grab the telescope and everything else? I think that's a great question.
I don't know the answer, but I'm really glad that someone thinks about these things more than I do. I'm curious if those questions will be answered, because I think they're very valid points.
Yeah. He also goes to say, why would the Klingons, and I had this question too, why would the Klingons leave their ship there alone for all that time? It has a working cloaking device that could change the course of the war, and all the great houses are aware of it. That is a great point.
That's true. Oh, man.
And he says, finally, I'm bothered by Discovery via the space tardigrade being able to spore jump accurately enough to appear in the atmosphere just above the colony. It's their first long-range jump, and it reminds me too much of Assault of New Caprica from the new Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, yeah. It's interesting. With the ship appearing in the atmosphere, I know that the JJ movies are pretty big on that. And I think it may have happened in an episode of Voyager as well, although I can't remember which one. So I know a few people have taken issue with that. And I definitely agree. Good points to raise. I wish I had an answer.
Right. No, these are definitely good questions. Ian Bartholomew says, I enjoyed this episode, though not as much as the first three. Ironically, for a serialized show, they aren't giving things enough room to breathe. It's like, here's this thing, bish, bash, bosh, there's a final outcome. The Corvan 2 thing should have had more time rather than being a literal flyby.
Yeah, and I think that's really a direct result of this being a, serialized over a season versus episodic form of television, unfortunately, because in TNG we would have had more about the people down on Corvan. So I don't disagree with that. I understand why they do it, but this episode I definitely felt had a lot in it, and definitely needed a couple watches to make sure to get everything in. And kind of sad we didn't learn about those people.
Yes. So one last mention for Christopher Query, who again has some questions for us. He says, very good overall, but the nitpicker and observer in me has the following comments and questions. I did not understand why it took so long for Burnham to get the will. Did it travel from the Shenzhou? That's a great question. I don't know.
And I think that kind of falls in line with the other question of like who went and retrieved what.
Yeah.
To send it to people.
And if Starfleet went, then why, maybe that's in the questions, but like, why didn't they destroy it? Or why didn't they tow it? Or, you know, why was it just left there?
And with the dilithium chamber and the crystal intact and everything.
Exactly.
That's a little odd. So
maybe they were busy fighting a war, I guess. I don't know.
Maybe. I would really love if those questions are answered down the road, because I think that would bring a lot to the story. So I love that those questions were raised, and hey, if the writers are listening, please answer them.
So this is another one Christopher talks about. The turbo lift didn't have handles. I don't think I would have ever noticed that.
No, I didn't. With the way that these ships are and the differences from TOS and Enterprise, it doesn't faze me.
Yeah. He also asks, I guess Klingons don't help out other Klingons. The ship has been disabled for 6 months. Maybe Cole was waiting for them to be desperate to get more followers in the cloaking device. But why did no other ships come sooner? Why wasn't the Shenzhou set to self-destruct? Did it not have enough power? The creature has shades of devil in the dark, and you had mentioned that, Heather.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot there, and the other Klingon houses, we know that some of them were behind Takuvma. They were behind Vok. I'm just going to say it both ways, I guess, the whole time here. So those are very good questions. I mean, at this point, we know that he's basically been abandoned. So I guess, maybe we'll find out.
Well, those are the fan responses. And listeners, we are so thankful that you take the time to let us know your thoughts on this newest episode. And so, Heather, how do you think the fans received this episode overall compared to the first 3?
So I actually did a poll this morning asking. Yeah, I've been doing them as we've gone along, and eventually I'll run out of space on Twitter, so I'll have to move it onto Facebook. But so far, this episode is the fan favorite. And I think that that's pretty much reflected in the comments that we got. I do think that a lot of people struggled like I did with some of the more difficult points, especially with the tardigrade and what's going to happen there. And I think it will be redeemed. But overall, I am finding that people are pretty happy with Discovery. And what I really love are the comments like the one earlier where his wife was watching, and, someone may not be a big Trekkie, but they're finding things that they really love. And, that's what this series was meant to do, to bring new people to the franchise. And I think that it's doing that. So I'm thrilled, and man, I can't wait for the next one. Is it Sunday yet?
I know, right? Well, be sure to check out our Discovery coverage throughout the week. We have a lot here on Trek FM, so let me give you the rundown. Live from the Edge airs on Monday at 9 p.m. Eastern and will be released as a podcast on Tuesday morning. Our commentary, that's with Mike Schindler, will be available as Tracks from the Edge on Wednesday. Then, of course, we will discuss your feedback on Postcards from the Edge on Thursday. That's today. And, of course, you can catch full analysis on the Edge main show on Friday. And to wrap up the week, join us for Notes from the Edge on Saturday for links between Discovery and the broader franchise. You'll find all of these in the main feed for The Edge and in the Trek FM master feed. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Discovery. And of course, the best place to do that is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. And as usual, I will collect your feedback and then present that here on this episode. You can also find us on Twitter at Trek FM or send us an email using the contact form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and choose the Edge, and that will come right to me. So Heather, where can people find you to talk Discovery on the internet and take part in these polls that you've got going?
So on Twitter, my personal handle is LLAPosper. And then if you want to talk about Discovery, I do a Discovery podcast called Disco Trek, and we're also on Twitter at Disco_Trek.
Excellent. You can find me here on the network. I host Earl Grey along with Justin Ozer and Richard Marquez, and I co-host The Edge over there as well. You can find me on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson. But my favorite place, again, is on the Babel Conference because I get to see all of your comments there. Well, if you'd like to help us keep all of our shows going and even become an associate producer, visit patreon.com/TrekFM for all the details. We'd like to thank our associate producers, Norman Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack, and Shoaib Mirza. Thank you so much for supporting The Edge. Well, we thank you, Heather, for coming on Postcards. Pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yes, and very excited that we finally have Trek on TV. This is a great time to be a Trek fan.
Yes, the best time.
Well, join us next week for another episode of Postcards from the Edge. Hailing frequencies open.